to the Education Task Force meeting. I know some of us know each other, but let's go around really quickly. I'll just start and say I'm Kathy Wilson, and I am the co-director for Action Advocacy for the State League, and I'm also on the Legislative Action Committee for Education, and I'd like to talk about some of the things that happened today with that one. So that, Sandy, you're the next one on my screen.
I'm Sandy Schuster. I'm just an education person. I like it. I'm interested in education. I belong to the Jeffco League.
Okay. And hi, Linda, you're next.
Hi, I'm Linda Hutchinson. I'm on the News Access and Literacy Task Force, and I'm on the Education Task Force because I'm interested in news literacy.
Okay. A circular.
Yes.
Hi, Helen, you're next.
I'm Helen Amoroso, Jeffco League. I'm also on the Jeffco Education Interest Group, and
Great.
like to keep up on the state stuff too.
Okay. Well, I've got quite a conversation for you today. Hi, Barb.
Oh, hi, Kathy. You want me to introduce myself or?
I do.
Oh. I don't know.
Please.
Is this a Monday? It's been a real Monday.
Hey, I've been on legislative committee meetings and the whole all day today. So
I've been in Friday meetings, not all league meetings. I'm Barb Winter. The League of Women Voters really well. One of the things I do with another organization, Delta Kappa Gamma, which is a key educators, women educators organization. And I'm ed law and policy person for their team, for their committee, state committee, but I'm also the same on my local committee. So, and I followed higher ed when I was at LAC for a long time, but it was just hard to drive back and forth to Greeley anymore, or to Denver anymore. But I'm interested in all things education.
Things are bouncing around now. Linda, we're doing some short introductions, but you just bounced as next on my list. Are you? No, it looks like we should be able to hear you. Maybe it's just coming in now. There we go. Hi, Linda. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Linda Haltman, and I am the chair, the team leader, they call it, of the schools team for League of Women Voters, Boulder County.
Boulder. Hi, welcome.
Thanks. And if I disappear, it's because my Zoom crashed. I've been having problems with Zoom, so.
So much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Andrea.
I'm Andrea Wilkins. I'm the legislative liaison with the State League, and I'm hoping to keep pace with the conversation that takes place in the meetings and look for opportunities to coordinate the work of the task forces with the lobbying efforts at the LAC. So if there's anything I can do to help or support, please let me know. And I'm actually in my car right now, so I'll probably be keeping my camera off, but I'm here in the background.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. And Tony, nice to see you here. Let's see. Tony, you're muted. Hi, Tony, are you there? You're muted.
Maybe she took a trip to the kitchen or something.
Maybe. Hopefully she'll be back. So welcome, everybody. Before I forget, I'm going to kind of start with an announcement so I don't forget. The next Colorado State Board of Education meeting will be this Wednesday, and it's going to be at 9 o'clock. There you are.
Can you hear me?
I can now. How are you?
I'm using my cell phone and I'm not used to doing that.
Well,
So-
you know,
You just want my name and what I'm interested in.
yeah, what you're
So-
doing, you know, why you're here. Why are you here, Tony?
Why am I here? I'm here because I'm interested in higher education.
Yeah.
And I'm following some of the bills in that area. And I'm also doing climate change and fiscal policy. And
Yeah.
that's it for now.
Barb, that was my reaction to it all.
I think that's a pretty heavy lift all the way around.
Yeah.
It really is.
Definitely. Okay, so the next meeting for the State Board of Ed is on Wednesday. It begins at 9 a.m. When I scanned it, you know, I don't know, I didn't see a lot of pressing league type conversation that was involved with it. It's also going to go to an executive session on the 9th as well. I know one of the things that they've been talking about is Adam 14. And what's been happening with that, because they have decided,
Can you talk up a little bit, Kathy? I didn't hear what you said the pressing issue was.
maybe I'm covering my stuff here, my speakers here. I know some of the things that they've been discussing is Adams 14 and their turnaround. And I know, can you hear it better, by the way?
Yeah.
Now that I've uncovered the speakers here, instead of having them covered. And their turnaround plan, and they were talking a little bit about this in they, oh, I'm getting feedback from somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. Anyway, their turnaround plan, because there's a suit that they have filed against the State Board of Ed. So that was part of the conversation. I wanted, though, one of the meetings with the State Board of Ed had a special meeting on Friday. And some of it was in some way related to what was happening in Adams 14, which I didn't know until I was listening to the discussion for that. And it centers around center. Wow, can you hear that? Can you all hear that?
Well, I heard you speak twice. the
Yeah,
same
and I'm
thing.
not quite sure what's
Kind of
happening.
like an echo chamber.
Yeah, maybe if you mute, if everybody mutes, and we'll see if it happens again. I don't know.
Well, now that you have me on mute, I don't know if I can mute. I don't know where the buttons are on this cell phone.
Oh, I can't help you with that one at all. Let's see what happens, though, with it. Anyway, they were reviewing Senate Bill 23-071. And I have the notes here. In essence, what that bill says that if it were to pass, it would allow a school district or educational institute to seek judicial review or file a civil action for declaratory relief against the rules, regulations, or final orders of the state board of the state board with this act, and which sounded, kind of crazy to me, but because it would be really overreaching. When I read the bill, it wasn't limited much at all. And the legislative liaison for the state board was saying that some of this was based on this Adams 14 action with their turnaround. Okay, so, but they said a school board, a public school board is a subgroup of the state. And so any subgroup of the state can't sue the state. And so it was like they shouldn't be able to do this at all. Okay, I'm seeing if there's anything else. Anyway, after a long discussion, which you can listen to if you're interested in this, because they do record the discussions for the state board. It was voted unanimously on opposing this. And they were opposing this because it was based on just how far reaching the bill was, the way it was written. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that one when it comes into committee. So that was one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about.
Who proposed the bill?
Yeah,
Pardon me? Oh,
Who
it was
proposed it?
Lorraine. Oh, what is her name? Let's see if I can pull it up. Hold on.
and I wanted to know kind of what the name of it was too.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it up.
Thank you.
It was 71. Okay, I'm going to our chart. It was proposed by Senator Danielson and Senator Garcia. And it's the title of it is Education Accountability Act. So yeah. So we'll see what happens with that one.
Hmm.
Like as I said, there seemed to be a question about whether it could, you could even have a bill like that and be able to sue another group within the state government. So that might just kill it to begin with. I don't know. But it had no guardrails on it, it seemed like, at all.
Well, where are school boards in the scheme of things, since we have local control? Are they really part of the state government?
It would have been the way it was written, as far as I can remember, it would be the district. So I don't know if that would be just limited to the state board. I don't know who would be named on this.
Okay, I gotta read it, I guess.
Yeah, if you read it, let me know what you think about it. But when I read it, it was like, huh? Really? If I don't like anything, I can sue. It would.
This was all in response to the District 14 problem.
This was possibly stimulated by Adams 14. Yeah.
Or Adams 14.
And they said what would happen is that the school board would be involved in litigation for approximately 2 years. Nothing would be happening. It would just stymie
everything up.
much. Yeah. So I can't imagine that one is
That may be the purpose of it.
I think
right.
so.
Yeah. So that was the vast majority. There were a few other bills that they discussed really quickly and voted on really quickly that were not of significant note, I think, to us. But I wanted to share that one. So if that one comes down, and then it's like this session, and I apologize to you who are on the LAC, because you're going to hear some of this stuff a couple of times. But it's like this session so far, education bills that are coming through are primarily from the Senate, and not as much, but not as much from the House committees. So, but today was a really interesting committee meeting this afternoon. Two of the bills that I'd like to share have to do with youth involvement, which was pretty cool. One was youth involvement in education standards review, and that's Senate Bill 008. And this would have students involved in standards review with the Department of Ed and locally on school districts. And at the state level, they required that there would be a youth from a rural school and one from an urban school Obviously, if it's a local school district, you wouldn't have that kind of guardrail because, you know, if it's an urban school, you're school district, you're probably not going to have a rural school represented or vice versa. And that they decided to that they would put an amendment, or they added an amendment to it that the age eligibility to be one of these students would be 14 to 19-year-olds. And that was based on a previous discussion. And that they would only be, if they would only have an advisory position, they would not have a voting position. And this bill passed unanimously. So it was, you know, it was a pretty supportive discussion. The other one that had to do with youth is 23076. And a previous bill for the Colorado Youth Advisory Council, I think it's council, or
Mhm.
COYAC, was going to expire. It was going to sunset in September, this coming September. And they wrote the bill to continue. And the way they wrote it to begin with was unanimously, but they're going to introduce one amendment when it goes into the floor of the Senate, that it would be a 5-year window because they wanted to reinvigorate basically the bill about every 5 years and have a discussion and talk about the good things these students were doing. So that also passed unanimously.
How
Then
many,
it was-
how many
Say-
people, how many students are on it?
It would, it depended. I think for the state, at the state level, there were 2 that would have to be one that's an urban student and one that's a
Oh,
rural.
I see. This is.
But they also, the bill also required local districts to have 2 students
Okay,
at the local level too, so that because right now there is absolutely no input from students regarding the standards. So this would at least give that that perspective on it. Another bill that came up today was special education funding, and that was Senate Bill 099. And that one would give $40 million plus for Tier B funding. And this was a vigorous conversation because students with disabilities, there are 108,000 about students with disabilities in Colorado right now. Okay. And this bill would cover by federal law 3-year-olds through 21-year-olds. Okay, so it's a pretty wide range for this. And right now, the funding for it is really inadequate. And what this additional $40 million of funding would do is it would cover 99.9% of the funding needs for these students, for Tier B students. And those are students who have 1 or more disabilities. They said what has happened since IDEA was passed and the last bill for Colorado was passed is that more, and I think if I remember correctly, IDEA was passed in 1974. So more children, more babies are living because of the advancements of medicine. And a significant a portion of these students end up with 1 or more disabilities that the schools need to address by federal law. And one of the representatives from she was from Canyon. Did I write this down? Hold on. Canyon City said that right now only 47% of their of the funding that they need for these children in that district was covered by federal and state funds. And so by federal law, if the funding that they're getting from federal and state doesn't cover the needs, then they have to take it from their general education funds in the district to cover it. And so this is just another in the mix of how you address the poor funding that's been happening in Colorado. And so let's see if there's anything else. So what's happening too, so you have the increase in students who need these services, and you have a decrease in the number of teachers and professional staff in the schools now. So there's a real need for the providers in the school. And so they've had to go to private providers, which is also costly for it. So anyway, this one passed. Hold on. I have all my notes in various places here. See if there's anything. They had loads of people in school districts and organizations who were talking in favor of passing this bill because of the need. They also said that the Canyon City person said that was saying that there's a larger percentage of special ed students in districts and schools of poverty too. And I guess where Canyon City is, there must be prisons there as well.
Yeah.
So some of these families are there. So it's, it's like this problem with a lot of different areas of complexity. But PTA was, just a whole bunch of people were speaking in favor of it, and it did pass. I want to say though, this one was.
Did it pass?
It wasn't unanimous though.
I was gonna say can't think, it's bipartisan.
Yeah.
Was there bipartisan support for it?
There's definitely bipartisan support for it, but it wasn't voted unanimously because Barbara Kirkmeyer was one of the sponsors of the bill. Yeah, right. And so she wasn't there because I only heard part of this discussion because the technology failed for a while, and it was.
Did you say she was a sponsor?
Yeah, she was a
sponsor? I thought
she's a sponsor, and so was.
Oh my gosh!
So was Senator Zenzinger.
I like Senator Zenzinger.
Yeah, so they were both, and I guess.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're co-sponsors and very enthusiastic about the whole thing. So they were really very behind this.
I take that call back.
Yeah, you should.
There's hope. Yeah.
Whoa. Even Senator Lundeen was for this.
Yeah, wow, that's all you needed to say.
Yeah. So this one did well.
Yeah, I think there's a big need for that.
Oh my goodness, the funding in schools here is just
deplorable.
Well, it sounds like we're bankrupting ourselves, taking care of the people who need so much help.
Yes.
This is what's happening to the healthcare system as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So school funding really needs to be looked at and addressed. And I know in the Joint Budget Committee, they were talking about that as well. The stabilization. I'm trying to think of the
budget stabilization factor.
The budget stabilization factor has really done a number on school funding. So, but the final one, you'll like this one the best because this one is like, I'm going to let Tony in a minute talk about adult education. I said
that's coming on the radar.
Yeah, that one is definitely a big thing coming on the radar, And I sat in on the Colorado Social Legislative Committee meeting that was talking about the adult education. But before we get to that, the last one I want to talk about is Senate Bill 061. And that one is, what's the right title for it? No, tell me I didn't do this. Put it here. Right. Hold on. Because I want to get the right title for this one. It is Eliminate State Assessment in Social Studies. Now, when I first read the title of this one, I went, what? This is definitely a league, a bill of league interest in it. And at first I was not necessarily in favor of it, but the more that I listened to the State Board of Education meeting that talked about this quite a bit, and the committee, the Senate committee meeting today, the more I was in favor of this for several reasons. There has not been a state assessment, a CMAS assessment for social studies since 2019, right? No CMAS since 2019. And then in 2020, they eliminated the high school level of social studies assessment completely. So this would just be talking about elementary and middle school, which has not been assessed since 2019 as a state assessment. But what they did do in the last couple of years is really beef up the standards for social studies, okay? And they are being assessed at the district level and at the school level and at the classroom level. So it's not like, children's learning is not being assessed. This would also save a little over $1 million for the state in not having this assessment. Social studies is also a graduation requirement, which is another way of saying it is being taught. Okay, because my fear was that if they eliminated the state assessment, but just kept English language, arts, math, and science, that it would get pushed by the wayside. But the fact that there are district assessments that are happening with it, and there is a requirement for graduation with it, that makes a big difference. Everybody and his brother was pretty much for this with the people that testified. So Barb, you had your hand.
A couple things.
Yeah.
I'm not as informed probably about the local testing and things, but I will just say from the teacher preparation side, and I don't know what's going on with the testing and that. When I left, the teachers had to pass the test. And you always had to pass the test in the content area that you're teaching. And social studies was very problematic to be tested for, because it covers political science, economics, history. There's about 5 different areas it covers. And it's very difficult to make decisions about what you're testing in all those different fields or disciplines, because it's a multidisciplinary area. And I guess if I had You know, and so therefore, do you have teachers who are qualified, and then what is the content you're really testing? So I think it is appropriate, probably at the minimum, to do it at the local level. But I
Mhm.
would be concerned about civic education, period, somewhere along the line being involved, and us, you know, students being accountable for learning about government.
Right. And it is, they are accountable with, because it's number one in the standards. And
Good.
number two, that is a graduation requirement. Now, it was really interesting because Andrea and I we had a meeting with Senator Marchman, who Janice Marchman, who was a sponsor of this bill, and I expressed my concerns to her about it. And you know, she went over a lot of what we had said, you know, what I've said already with this, and what you have said as well with this. She wanted to put, let me get the right terminology here, a legislative declaration added to it, but then, you know, in support of civics education, and that, but Senator Lundin kind of was against the declaration, and so that didn't go anywhere at all. It ended up passing on by party lines, so it was a 4-3 vote on this, and so it's going to appropriations. None of the bills today that were discussed in this committee were indefinitely postponed, so they are all moving to appropriations with this.
And this was Senate Ed.
Yes, this was the Senate Ed Committee today.
It seems counterintuitive for League of Women Voters to say that we want to
I know.
against social studies.
I know,
Believe it.
but you know, but I think we have to me, you know, and I'll be presenting this in the Legislative Action Committee, but I think we are going in the right direction if we do this. It was very interesting at the end listening to Senator Lundin expressing, you know, his opinion, but the way he expressed it was really, in a way, misinformation, because he said social studies wouldn't be assessed, but what he should have been saying, and what the counter remarks to him should have been saying, no, it's not being assessed at the state level. Number one, at the state level with the CMAS, which is a computerized multiple choice assessment. And that's not necessarily the best way to be assessing students' knowledge and ability to, I think, be able to apply some of this information. But that's my personal opinion on it. I can send you articles that I've written about it. So,
Well, I don't know, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, the dream was to have performance assessments.
exactly.
But that
Exactly.
didn't go anywhere, because talk about costing money.
That's exactly what it was. That's when I was in California, and we put that forward, and that was exactly the reason why it didn't end up passing, was because how costly it was. And it was to have students be writing about this and doing, you know, creating projects to
All
study.
in time, teachers'
Yeah.
time, students'
So
time.
the standards have been brought up numerous times in your conversation today.
Yes.
Are people actually accepting the standards, or are
Yes. They
how do
were
we know
passed.
that?
Yeah, they were passed
they
by
were
the State
passed,
Board of
but-
Education.
But that doesn't mean that they're going to do them, is what I'm saying.
Well, you know, what else are you going to do? I mean, I think I
Some of
would,
the school districts that are that are very hostile to this whole process are probably not going to do them.
would it be good to you? and Helen, I'll get you in a minute. Would it be good if I posted the link to the social studies standards
Sure.
on the Education Task Force website? Because I can do that so that you can look over them. And that was one of the things that Senator Marchman did was summarize in fairly broad strokes what each one of the years was focusing on in the standards for elementary and middle school. Because remember, it's just elementary and middle school that this bill would impact. Because already it's in law that the high school students are not assessed on this at all. Yeah. So I found it interesting that there's no ruling on when in high school certain courses like civics are taught. It's up to the district.
Economics.
Yeah. Well, civics. I mean, for us, it would be civics. Helen.
First of all of that testing uses not only resources, but time and student time. And many people would rather see that students be receiving education rather than, taking standardized type tests.
Mhm.
But Sandy, in regard to what you were talking about, my grandson is in Douglas County, and he's in a online program that has, they follow the curriculum for Douglas County and get assignments and that sort of thing. His social studies teacher this year, he's in 8th grade, is amazing. My daughter is afraid he's going to get fired because of the county he's in. But he does, it's not just memorizing facts at all. They have to draw conclusions from historical events about today.
That's great.
It's just amazing.
However, it's only one person in one school, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's,
And my daughter's afraid
get
he's going to
fired.
get fired, but my grandson is tired. He has so much social studies homework. It's but I keep saying in the long run, he'll appreciate it. He's
Yeah.
getting such good experience. So
One of the other things too, Sandy, and I'm assuming it's the same as here. I used to be, I was on faculty at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and I taught in the Department of Teaching, Learning, and Teacher Ed. And I was a literacy. My background is literacy. And one of the things that we were teaching our students to do and involved in too at the state level in Nebraska was incorporating social studies readings, not only in social studies, but
Right.
during English language arts, as well. So they're getting it, they're getting that information from different, in different ways. And part of that instruction is also discussing what's happening. This one of the teachers that was talking today was talking about, and he was a high school social studies teacher, was talking about how his students never knew what, his own personal politics. He kept it so that they could make their own decisions as well during it. And I think there's so many wonderful ways to approach instruction for social studies that's really engaging with students. And I think that's, more so than with some of the others. Oh, good. Linda, thank you for posting that. I was going to say, if you to find the the Education Task Force website, just go to LWVCO to the website and go to advocacy, that drop down menu. It has all of the different task forces. And just go to education, you click on that, and you can see what I've added so far with that, which I noticed when I was there about a half hour before this meeting, that I didn't change to the February dates of the State Board of Education, but there's all sorts of things on that website that I've tried to put up for you. Tony, are you still there? And can you talk a little bit about adult education? You're muted. No, you're not going to be able to. No, bummer. I can tell you that the discussion I heard about, let me just go back for a second in my notes here, about Senate Bill 007, excuse me, 007, and it had the title of it is adult education. That one seemed to be favored in the meeting that I was at to one of the a different adult education bill that was going through. One of the advantages of 007 was that it incorporated digital skills into what they were doing, what they wanted to do with adult education. And let's see if there's any highlights that I can see about this.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
go for it. It's your bill.
I found a button. So you're probably ahead of me since you heard it in committee.
No, I didn't. I didn't hear it in committee yet. Did it have a hearing?
Not 007 that I know of.
No, I heard it in the legislative, what is it? Social legislation? What is
Oh,
that?
yeah, right.
You know.
Colorado social
Yeah.
legislation. Yes, right. Yeah, it adds technical skills.
Mhm.
Okay, just to be sort of brief, because in my estimation, so far, there's some important things, but not crucial things. And, they're nice, they're feel good, some of them. So let me go through the workforce. The reason that I'm doing workforce is because some of them are connected to the higher education or education in general. So the first one, 003, just has the ability for the Department of Education to partner with some non-profit for adult education. So it gives them another avenue and another way of doing adult education and stimulating or making more of that adult education possible. And then there's a forestry workforce, and they're trying to work on educating people to understand and know about wildfire mitigation and development. And the schools that are authorized for this expansion of this program would be the community colleges and Colorado Mountain College. So the Colorado Mountain College is not exactly a community college, it's a district college, but it tends to be more community college. So it's to increase the workforce ability of people to participate in forestry. You can probably tell the importance of that, given our current situation with forest fires and things that need doing. And one of the things, I was listening to testimony today, and one of the things that struck me was there was a a person who was a legislator who was condemning the state forester for not doing things right. And he said, you know, I look over and I see the forest fire and the whole thing, and it's destroying Colorado. And nobody said it, but it seems to me that what we did for forestry a while ago is different than what we need to do for forestry now, given climate change. And so we can't use the same systems that we used before to deal with what is happening to our forest and to just about everything else. So I was sort of taken aback by the fact that nobody said that, and maybe they just didn't want to be controversial and they wanted this bill to get through. So then there's another bill that's talking about preparation for the skilled workforce, which because of the changing nature of work, that this is important to emphasize different kinds of skills that people need. And so apprenticeships and so forth need to be working with people to address their skills in new and emerging industries. I think, you know, a lot of these are really pretty interesting, and that they're where I think they should be going. And those bills, except for one, have been passed on to appropriations, and so they'll sit there for a while. The timber industry was, that was the one I heard today, and they were really pushing it. There was no controversy. There was nobody who opposed it except for 4 committee members. But this was to set up new programs and to do different things with how we deal with timber production, and that's an important industry in the state, and we need to support it and to emphasize it in the future. There are 2 or 3 bills that really are talking about the future and that things are changing, and we need to make sure that we have skilled labor for the future, and that we're often just sticking with the old way of teaching and the old way of preparing people and the old skills, that we need to change all of that and to be more forward looking, to get people the ability to do what's needed to be done in the future. I did hear the bill, this is not relevant, but particularly it was about the bill about letting farmers take care of their own equipment. That went on for like 3 hours. It amazed me, but there was a lot of controversy. It did pass, but a lot of controversy. I also must say that my Zoom went out on me 3 times today, so it got a little garbled. Let's see, now there are some higher education bills, but again, there's a financial assistance program for financial assistance for education programs. That's, allows more financial assistance to go to people who are in internships or apprenticeships, and there's also a bill that for earned time for non-violent offenders. So if you're incarcerated and you get a degree or a certificate, that would go towards good behavior, and you might get out a little bit earlier than you had anticipated. Just a couple more.
While you're looking for your next one, I did look on our spreadsheet, and the adult education 1007 did pass the committee and is on to appropriations.
Yeah. Every one of those in the first part that I talked about, I went to appropriations except the one that was PI'd.
Yeah,
So there's a bill that would allow for the higher education department to designate certain schools as first generation schools, meaning that they serve first generation students. And they'd have to have 45% or more of their institutions overall residents as student populations that were first generation students. And I don't know for sure, but I know Metro has already been designated as a minority serving institution. And probably Fort Lewis, but I don't know.
And I think UNC has too.
Has it?
And I somehow, and I even think it's especially for Hispanics.
Well,
I don't know where that does. They had some celebration where they were recognized for that.
yeah, I think probably generally it would be Hispanics in this state, except
Right.
Fort Lewis has a lot of Native American population
Oh.
because they have an agreement where those people can get reduced tuition or no tuition. I think that sort of rounds it up. It means some interesting things. I think they try to do some good things. And I haven't seen any really dastardly things appear yet. So, and I was thinking about this though, that, these are feel good, kinds of pieces of legislation. And it seems to me that in the past, we've sort of started out the legislature doing that for higher education. And then towards the end, they get this big bill that everybody is fighting with everybody over. So we'll see if that happens again this year.
the other one last one that I want to talk about that I was expecting to hear this morning was House Bill 1064, and it's called Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact, but they laid it over to tomorrow. And that one is to have basically reciprocity among, I think it was 10 states at this point, for teachers who are certified to be able to get certification with some limitations in each one of these states that signs on to the compact, and that this would be especially helpful for military people who are in the military that are transferred and who are teachers. It would facilitate them continuing being teachers, but they really had to follow state requirements and guidelines to some extent. I remember in California, one of my colleagues at the school where I taught, it was coming from Texas. She had advanced degrees in special education and still had to jump through the hoops of taking 3, basically undergraduate courses. They were graduate level, but still, super basic credentialing type courses. And this would eliminate that type of thing.
Yeah, it seems to me that that you get a lot of basic instruction, and I don't mean at the level of basic, but you get a lot of special education and how to deal with parents and whatever else you get in your education program. And the only thing you don't get is probably the history of the state, which is probably interesting. And you should have a good background in that, I think. Yeah, so it's kind of, you've got these artificial boundaries called states.
Yes.
And, there's a lot of education that goes on across the country that is similar. And why we put up all these barriers when we need teachers, and we scare off a lot of them, and we don't.
You make it harder than it needs to
be.
Yeah,
right.
And I had several cases where people had taught and maybe they wanted to add a certificate, and then, the state said, well, they had to have a student teaching experience.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, maybe they need some time, but they don't need 16 weeks as supervised, that was just a real bump in the road. That's all I
And-
have to say.
And this is the time when we have a teacher shortage.
Shortage. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it's
So
definitely, we
it's
need
like-
to make it easier than harder.
Right, right. And it really, the boundaries that it gave were really reasonable ones. So it wasn't like it was just laissez-faire.
Sure.
You know, you could do it. There were certain, there are certain guidelines that states would have to.
What would make this really good, though, if the states got together and decided on the credentialing
Yeah.
and required the same courses, because you know that Mississippi doesn't do the same thing as California.
Right, exactly, exactly. And that's why I think that's why they have these guidelines, or I don't want to call them guidelines, these requirements that the states can ask for, individual states can ask for, with teachers coming from a state that they might wonder, might question.
Yeah, there were lesser standards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Plus, you can be in the same state and go to different institutions and have wildly
But
different.
don't they have a state licensure?
Sure,
Yeah,
yes,
they
Yeah.
do, but
But
sometimes
that's the
every
one.
professor has an advisee who is the first level of screening the transcripts.
yes. Amen.
Amen to that.
Amen.
I've often wondered about this. I have a teaching certificate from Massachusetts that I got in 1960, and it says in perpetuity.
Oh, they stopped doing those.
Yeah, they quit
Yeah,
that.
but I have one.
Well, see if
You're
you can get
special.
that, see if you can get that accepted in Colorado.
Tony, you need to go back to work.
Yeah, no. That was, by the time I got my degree, that was gone. It
Mine too.
wasn't a possibility, so. All right, we're getting really close to our ending time. Other comments, other information to share by anybody?
Well, I just wanted to ask, and maybe, I don't know if it's on, I'm pretty sure it's on the Colorado State Department of Ed. But it seems like there's questions coming up about that accountability report. And I just wondered how easy that is to access, or where I can access it.
I'll see if I can find it.
Okay,
because
because
they've
I
talked
started
about
listening to it and they're droning on, and I couldn't see the screen. But, that's tied into the Adams 4 or 12 or whatever on that. that
14,
people are-
14.
14, yeah.
Yes.
Well, anyway, I think we need to be familiar with what's in that report,
Uh-huh.
because I think it does impact some of the things that we might be seeing in legislation.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I will
But
see. if
thank
I
you
can-
for the update on all of it.
One quick thing, Kathy.
Ms. Talent, go for it.
Is there any discussion or pushback on the newly appointed state board
I know what you're talking
committee
about.
member?
No, and he was really tentative during this discussion I listened to on Friday. He's just kind of sitting back. So
Oh,
I haven't heard anything. And he's sworn in, I guess. And I got, did you send me, I'm trying to remember, because somebody did send me something about him.
yeah, somebody from South Unit
Mhm.
of Jeffcoat did send it, and I was getting ready to, and they said, "Oh, I already sent it." Yeah,
Mhm.
there
So
was
no,
a
he was appointed because somebody resigned, or
Yeah.
what happened?
Wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
yeah, it was a Republican who resigned, and he was appointed because he's a Republican.
Yeah,
But he
probably
was
the vacancy
he-
committee of the Republican Party for that office.
For
probably.
the school board?
Yes, for the state
Yeah.
school board. Yes.
Vacancy committee for the Republican Party.
They're
Wow.
replacing.
Yeah, they're replacing somebody who was elected that was Republican.
Yeah, I mean, I know they do that, but I didn't know they did it for the school board too.
it's District 3, House District 3. So
Okay.
Yeah.
and he
I mean, I've been on some of those things for another
you mean
party. and
It's gotta be
it's
it's gotta be
It's
seating.
amazing how small the amount of people can
Yeah,
make a decision like that.
exactly. No, I've
there-
been involved with a couple, not directly, but indirectly.
And if I remember correctly, because I'd have to go back and read the email, there was a questioning about some of the political actions that he was involved with. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah.
I
he,
remember reading it, but I don't remember what the details were.
Yeah, I don't either.
His background is in, not in general education, but in, what do you call it? Charter schools and that
Oh,
sort of
that's right.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
And-
that would
and
make sense.
also, there was some political stuff about maybe he was gonna run for city council, and it was all just a bunch of junk.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I would be interested to see. I should sit in on the school board meetings, because
Yeah, see what he's like on Wednesday.
The
You
problem
know,
with those school board meetings is they're so long.
it's all day.
Yeah.
It's
And
basically all day. The agenda, you can see the agenda.
yeah,
There's a link. There's a link that says watch the meeting or something like that. And
I
you
went
can,
to the I went to the January one, and it also went into the next day.
yes, well, this one's going into the Wednesday as well. I mean, it's already scheduled. It starts at 9 a.m. It is literally all day. It's really
You
a
gotta
packed.
really be dedicated to do that.
Yeah. So it will be interesting because he just looked like he was not up to speed about what was being discussed at all at the special meeting. And it was really a pretty intense discussion,
mhm,
you know, especially about suing the school board, that one, and eliminating the state assessment. So, which they voted unanimously for, so. With that one, anyway. That'll be interesting to see.
yes.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Okay, I will look into, see if I can find the accountability report. It seems like I found a link at one point to that, and I'll also post the link to the state standards for
Okay.
social studies, so you
Okay,
can
thank you.
peruse those. Just remember, the bill that's up is impacting elementary school and middle school. Okay,
Sure.
so, cool,
Okay,
Okay.
I've got one more comment,
go for
if I
it.
may. A while ago, the higher education people decided that they were going to set up the requirements for people to come into the four-year schools, particularly. And maybe you all know this, but prior to that, it was as I understand, it was kind of loosey-goosey. It was, and I think that, and social studies is one of the requirements that they were talking about. So to get accepted into a public higher education institution in the state of Colorado, you have to meet certain requirements, math and English and social studies, I believe. And so that sort of drove the curriculum, it seemed to me, of the K-12 institutions, because they had to prepare their students to
Mhm.
go into higher education. So, it's one of those interesting things that, the higher ed and the K-12 are co-joined in many ways, and this is one of them.
Mhm.
That was good.
I'm trying to remember, and I don't think I wrote it down, as to whether social studies was assessed in the SAT or the PSAT. So. And
I don't know, I've forgotten those initials now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And they've changed. They've changed over.
And there are two of them, and Colorado is one and not the other, and
Right.
The ACT, it's the
I lost
ACT
track
and
of
the SAT.
testing, period.
You want to know whether social studies was addressed in them?
Yeah.
I think I can find out for you. I had
It seemed like
Students or
somebody mentioned it.
grandchildren taking those exams the last few years, so I'm sure I could find that out.
Okay, okay.
I don't think they do social studies,
I
actually.
don't think they do either. I think that's what was mentioned, in
Mhm.
passing
Yeah.
in this discussion today, that's not assessed there either, so.
It may
I don't
not be, but it's a requirement for higher ed.
Yeah, to take the
Mhm.
course,
Yeah,
right?
you still have to
Right.
take, it's
Courses,
still a required course to graduate.
right.
Right.
and it's
In,
still
in
graduation.
a college course, you're
Right.
talking about?
Well,
Not a
in
high
K
school course.
12, you have to take social
Oh.
studies
Right, it's
to get
K-12.
Oh,
into higher ed without,
Yeah, you have to be able to meet the standards, and you meet the
Yeah.
standards through taking them, passing the course.
Right.
okay, yeah.
Right. All right.
All right, I got it. I've got to go to bed. Well, Celeste has got me
Okay.
getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go down and talk about voting methods in Frederick. So
Oh, God.
I know,
Have fun.
I can hardly wait.
Thanks,
Okay, good.
everybody.
Thank you. Okay,
Night.
good night.